From the Daily Mail, Tim Walz's family members reveal they are backing Trump in bombshell leaked photo. Can you call it a leaked photo? A new leaked image shows members of vice presidential candidate Governor Tim Walz's family are supporting his Republican rival. Tim Walz, look at this. Walz is for Trump. Who are these? Is that like his mom or something? 8 members of the Minnesota governor family posing for an image showing their support for Republican rival Donald Trump. We knew that his brother had been speaking out. They said the photo quickly went viral among MAGA users who say his own family's opposition to his candidacy is proof that people should be wary of voting for a Harris-Walz ticket. I'm not convinced she can win right now. I don't know. She calls herself the underdog. Piers Morgan just bet Scaramucci $1,000 that Trump is going to win.
That's interesting.
You say Kamala calls herself the underdog?
Yep. And Piers Morgan bet $1,000 that Trump's going to win.
I bet $5,000 on Trump in 2016. I paid 10-1.
10-1.
Yeah.
What? Wow.
Are you going to bet this year?
I didn't bet 2020, but I think he's gonna. I think he's gonna win this year. I didn't bet 2020, but I think he's got it this year.
Why do you think so?
It's just he's doing right moves with the podcast. He's talking to the people. He's got his act together. The podcast he's doing. He called his son a secret weapon baron. I think he's right in that.
I think the podcasts are a big deal for sure. Absolutely. But I would say if your VP can't convince their own family to vote for him, you're in trouble.
Well, it sounds kind of similar to what Kennedy was experiencing with the other Kennedys coming out and being like, don't vote for him, vote for Kamala Harris. And you're like, well, you don't always, you are not your family.
Yeah, I get the comparison you're making. It is making me laugh, though, that they're, like, his brother is saying character stuff, but other people in the family are just like, nope, we're voting for Trump. Like, we like this guy. It makes me wonder, because part of the thing that bothers me about Tim Walz, and everyone gets to grow and change, but when he ran for Congress, he postured much more moderately. He was in a rural area, and he seemed to sort of signal, whatever. He was a moderate Democrat. But then when he became governor and every part of the state was controlled by Democrats, he was like, great, super progressive now. And maybe that's the thing that his family is picking up on. Like, you can't really say what's going to come from a Harris-Walz presidency because they shift based on what will get them votes, whereas Trump is more consistent in his policies. It's hard to say, though. They haven't actually said anything.
Yeah, when it comes to candidates, like, do you want a candidate that bends to the will of the people and does what they want because they're supposed to represent the people? So in a way, yeah. But in another way, you want a candidate when they get in there, they don't capitulate to the mob. If the mob shifts and all of a sudden wants some new crazy thing, you want a candidate who's like, actually, this is who I am. This is what I believe. You voted me here.
You want a candidate with some sort of sense of self, right? Because you want them to represent the people. On the other hand, if you're negotiating with world leaders, you have to kind of have a sense of what the people want and the direction they want the country to go in. They can't just always be looking for those around them being like, will you like me if I do this thing? Like, you have to make the hard decisions sometime. I don't know.
Most of these people are fake. And, one of my good friends is a big tough guy, and he put it best. He said, this is a battle of real versus fake. And, whether people want to hear it or not, like, I think Trump represents real, and, a lot of the other people out there represent fake. If you look,
I hope he wins. I mean, the fact that he's doing all these 2-hour-long sit-down podcasts where he's just talking, Harris could never do that.
Exactly. He's real. He's talking. He's answering questions. And like you said with the lies, there's so many lies being thrown at him. People ask me why I like him. I'm a big anti-bullying guy. I've been anti-bullying my whole life. I think he's the biggest victim of bullying probably in the planet. He's been bullied by everybody. But, he's real. He's honest. He's done how many interviews now? 25 podcasts. And she's done one highly edited interview. And I don't even know who she is. I don't really know much about her. But, it'd be nice if she did some more interviews. But, it's really an issue of real versus fake, it seems. Yeah.
You travel a lot. You live in Mexico. Do people, when they find out you're American, talk to you about this? Or do they know who Kamala Harris is? Because Trump was a global name.
Yeah, I tell people this, like with this whole issue, I've been telling people that, like, I got in the news for just asking people to stop the Trump hate in general. And I don't think it's the whole world. It's 10 million or so people that are severely affected with Trump hate. But people don't want to hear it. They don't want to believe me. But, because I say there's hundreds of millions of Trump supporters. They say, well, how could that be? Only 70 million people voted for him or so. But, I travel over the world, and, he's liked or loved in Mexico and in Europe. And in South America alone, he might have a few 100 million supporters. I mean, people in South America love the guy. So, it's easier to talk about Trump in Mexico than it is in the United States. I mean, in certain parts of the United States, you say you like Trump, and I don't know, people either get really aggressive or they walk out the room or they say they never want to talk to you again. But in Mexico, people are mostly just curious, or they like him, or even if they don't like him, they'll say something along the lines of, I don't care for him, but I wish we had a president like that. And you hear that all over the world, really. I mean, I got people in 39 countries, so
yeah,
I know about this better than most, I think.
Yeah, I think there is a different. I mean, it's obviously easier to talk about something when it's not your country. There's a little, you can be a little bit more objective, but I think that there is an international respect for Trump from from people who wish their leaders were better negotiators, frankly, than there is in the United States. I think in the United States, it's such a social emotional issue to hate Trump. Like if you were to say, well, I don't like him, but he did do this one thing right. There are certain people in certain social enclaves that would just be like, get out of here. I can't talk to you. I mean, it is really like a badge of dishonor to say even one positive thing about Trump.
It's almost like, toxic relationships. People on the outside looking in can say, you're in a toxic relationship. And people in foreign countries, they look at the United States and they think we're in a toxic relationship with politics. People get all wound up. We don't understand it. People get so wound up, but people on the outside looking in, they don't have the same issues that we got in the United States. They just see it as, Jesus is a guy that's fighting for his country, and maybe he's not the ideal person for me, but he's fighting for his country, and I wish we had that here. But yeah, we don't. A lot of people are in a toxic relationship with politicians, in the United States, where the politicians poison their mind and make them hate their friends and family members and stuff like that over just about nothing, really.
Or blind devotion. That's another form of toxicity.
Yeah, exactly. I tell everybody, you become stupider when you become too much to one side or another. I mean, there's studies that prove it.
Yeah.
Yep.
You become too far to one side, you become stupider. So even if you like Trump, don't go all in on the Trump stuff. You should be critical to both sides.
He kind of represents an essence of stability in a way, but then to other people that don't like it or don't agree with that, they think he's the essence of instability. It's very weird how the polarization has been sown or divided.
It's media or whatever. You guys probably know. I don't know what it is. What is it that causes
the corporate press lies?
Yeah.
They I don't know what 60% of what they say is fake.
Yeah.
So I mean, you get a story like this, and you can see the picture of the family wearing the shirts. You know that it was tweeted out. Trump posted it, and you're like, okay, I can reasonably conclude the story is likely true. But then you get all these other stories, and I swear they're just mostly fake. I mean, the best example, of course, is the very fine people hoax. The media incessantly says this. Joe Biden says this. They just lie, claiming Trump called Nazis fine people, which he did not. And then you get these people who live in this cult world who won't hear otherwise. They don't want to watch the video proving it's a lie. What do you do?
You got it. Well, according to Eric Weinstein, who just did an interview with Chris Williamson, you ask them questions. How do you feel about the way that transpired? About things that have happened when they realize for a moment, without trying to tell them what to feel, and let them start to question it themselves. Stay calm, dispassionate, and
that I think that's naive. I saw that he was talking about the, Weinstein was talking about the illusion of choice, the magician's choice, it's called, where you think you're choosing between one of two candidates, but they both represent the same thing. I think most millennials have complained about this on the internet for a long time, especially considering the Bush to Obama transition was not really anything special. And the joke among the left is that when you get a Republican president, the plane is dropping bombs. And when you get a Democrat, it's a plane dropping bombs. There's a rainbow on the plane. Right? So everybody agrees that it's all just fake choice. But this idea that you can approach someone and try the Socratic method of like, what about this? How do you think about this? It doesn't work because what's happening is not that they're wrong and they want to be right. It's that they're trying to figure out what is socially acceptable. And so if they know that what is socially acceptable is that Trump is bad, you saying, why don't you like Trump, will result in them saying, what do you mean? Why wouldn't I not like the guy? I mean, there's so many reasons. And then you say, okay, give me one. And they'll go, why are you defending Trump? The reaction is anybody who's socially acceptable accepts Trump as bad, and you would not question that. So this idea of this, it's the Socratic method. You ask someone to try and parse out their beliefs so they can eventually discover they're wrong. It's not going to happen with these people.
It does sometimes. I was talking to my father. I told this story like a couple weeks ago. We were watching an interview with Zelensky on MSNBC, and he was like, so a lot of the Americans, the interviewer was saying, are concerned with the fact that Americans are funding the war in Ukraine. And Zelensky was, the Americans are not funding the war in Ukraine. This is after we gave him $61 billion. At the end of the interview, I told my dad, well, that's crazy that he blatantly said we're not funding the war after we just gave him $61 billion. He's like, no, he said we're not fighting the war. I was like, no, he said funding. He's like, he said fighting. And temperatures started to rise. I was like, let's rewind it and watch. We did. He watched it. He saw that he said we're not funding the war. He saw I was right. And me, rather than going, see, you're wrong, I was right. Rather than doing that, I said, well, what I didn't say, what I should ask him is, how do you feel? And then let him kind of experience that dissonance, because that's the beginning of cracking open that path.
I don't know.
I got a simple solution. I think if you're like me and you got somewhat of an audience, but people don't necessarily know your politics. I spoke to 5 million people. If you're like me and you like Trump and you got a good reputation, you just got to speak up and admit it, because I think the fact of the matter is if everybody that liked Trump spoke up in unison and started admitting it, particularly highly intelligent people with good reputations, if everybody spoke up all at once, the Trump haters, they'd be in shock,
I agree.
And it would go away very quickly. But,
Yep.
Everyone's staying quiet. So hopefully, I think people are starting to do it. Elon really led the way doing it, and other people, Kanye in a way did too. People don't like when I say Kanye, but
I think it's just normalizing it, right?
Yeah, but exactly. People, if you like Trump, hopefully, I don't know, not to talk about myself, but hopefully you saw what I did and what other people are doing, and there's really a short amount of time. You gotta speak up and say you like them, and particularly if you have a good reputation, and take the hits. And I can tell you, it's mostly all talk and no action. The people saying stuff about you, it's going to be mostly all talk and no action, but you got to speak up.
Indeed. Yeah, that's the solution to a lot of problems, but a lot of people don't want to. They don't speak up. They're scared of losing their jobs. And so you end up with what people refer to as the secret Trump voter. But I guess without the massive public support, the institutions will continue to pump out lies, continue to try to radicalize people or terrify them into not supporting the better candidate.
Mm-hmm. And I think the media has depicted people who support Trump as extremist others. It's scary when they're in your community. If your neighbor has a Trump flag, you should be nervous. It's fear-mongering, which I think is a big play for any kind of left-wing outlet and left-wing political party in America. But to your point, if you were just to say oh yeah, I voted for Trump, it's not a big deal. If you keep it normal, I think it becomes much less terrifying to someone who doesn't really consume a fair amount of media. If you're only consuming biased media and you believe that people who support Donald Trump are a threat to the nation, then of course you run the other way. But if it was actually just your friend and their husband or whatever else who support it, it becomes more familiar and therefore less intimidating.
If I look at these guys, Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, they kind of resemble a pile of wood and a pile of leaves. And I'm I don't really care to make either a pile of wood or a pile of leaves the president. They're both pretty useless, but okay, whatever. That aside, the pile of leaves, if you're going to use that for fuel, it's gone in a puff. It looks pretty. It looks bountiful. It has almost nothing to it. Whereas the dense wood, it's heavy. It's obnoxious. It's in the way, but at least it's useful. That's kind of where I'm at. That's a rough metaphor. I think the concern with Trump is a lot of people are afraid he's going to go in there and try and start arresting all these people in the DOJ.
Afraid?
Yeah, they're afraid he's going to go in and arrest a bunch of people and cause mad chaos. Well, the people that don't want him are terrified that he's going to harm them.
Those are people that work for the government or got family members that work for the government.
Yeah, a lot of people like that are terrified of him. So if he could assuage them and be like, look, I really am America. I want to make us together, and I'm not going to destroy our union. And then there's people that support him. They're like, no, you have to go after all these. You can't win the hearts and minds of the world if you're going to go arrest a bunch. No one's going to let you into the office if they're the people that run the show are the administrative state. Mm-hmm. They're not going to let him in if they think he's going to arrest them all.
Right, for the January
bad
6th
guys
supporters,
are not going to let the good guys stop the bad
guys. You have to work with the bad guys to make this the real deal.
You have to join the bad guys, otherwise the bad guys won't let you in.
You have to join them in that you're working towards a similar purpose, which is global stability. Now, however we get there, you're going to work with evil people and you're going to work with good people on the way there. However you see those people. And if you're good, you might see evil people as evil. If you're evil, you might see good people as evil. It doesn't matter. But we need to figure out how to develop the new world order with him. If we really want Trump to be president and for people to trust him, we've got to figure out how to do this legitimately.
So you think NATO needs to expand into Ukraine and control all of its borders straight up to Russia's western front. Israel must be funded and expand in the region and control the Gaza and the West Bank. And China should be repelled back from Taiwan, and Venezuela should be sanctioned and shut down. And Trump should do those things.
That's the military victory. That's what we've geared our economy towards since the late 60s, early 50s, maybe even late 1949 on. And that's really where the ball is rolling. So to just hit the brakes would destroy, pure chaos. It would be, God knows, the terror that would ensue if we stopped the machine all at once.
Yes, but what happens when the car is breaking down?
You pull over. You pull over slowly, and then you get the car
agree.
fixed.
That seems like what Donald Trump is. And the Democrats are like, no, slam the gas and just push it as far as we can until we can't go any further.
Right, and it's not working anymore. Technology's too easy to come by. The Russians have
like
better
this.
hypersonic missiles than we do, according to the Russians.
Well, I don't know about this, but
That's what Putin keeps claiming.
sure, he claims a lot of things.
But it's like two hypersonic missiles. Doesn't matter who's got better ones. They're both going to hit.
I like your analogy, though. Donald Trump is, the car is breaking down, let's pull over, fix the tire, maybe check on the engine. But hey, if we pull over, the other guys are going to speed past us. Yeah, well, if we keep going, the car breaks down. The Democrats are saying, slam the gas as hard as we can, even if the engine blows, and we'll make it as far as we can, we'll win the race. And we'll be the king of the ashes.
Because if we have a multipolar world, they think that we're going to lose inherently. Maybe that's like self-depreciation. They think we're not good enough to win the world culturally. They think if we don't control it militarily, then we don't win.
I think the dream of the liberal economic order has always been to control the entire planet as a single economic bloc. And they can't because there's conflicting powers, such as the Soviet Union was one. It collapsed, but Russia is still powerful enough. Then you have, of course, China. And China's massively expanding. And the Western forces, the liberal economic order, cannot stop them. They can't do it. They're trying. They can't. And based on what's going on with Ukraine and Israel, it looks like they're willing to go to full-scale nuclear war in order to get what they want. Annihilation or nothing. Donald Trump is let's rebuild America and make it work and function properly, and then we'll revisit where we can go internationally. I would rather have functioning jobs in the United States, better trade agreements, secure borders, functioning governments, equality under the law, as opposed to hundreds of billions of dollars spent on funding a war in Ukraine.
That's the Christian look on things, is like take the plank of wood out of your own eye before you try and take the piece of dust out of your neighbor's or your brother's eye. Like fix yourself, fix your country, fix your car before you try and win the race. But if the race has to be won at all costs, get there with a devastated car. Maybe you'll get there, maybe you won't. Like I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. I'm not terrified. I'm not terrified that if Russia takes Sevastopol and secures the Donbass, that everything's going to hell. I'm not. I feel like if we can figure out one language, that we actually can start to work together, and that Russia and China and the United States can become the world police together with India, obviously. But we need to patrol the Arctic. We need to maintain order. We need to make sure we don't poison ourselves.
I don't want to be the world police. That sounds awful. I also don't want one universal language. That also sounds awful.
Well, it's a common language.
I understand wanting unity. I understand wanting people to work together. I think we just have to be realistic about it. I mean, people are always going to have tensions and have goals that are conflicting. Really, for America, I think that the best move is to have someone who can have good diplomatic relationships with other countries, even if we don't see eye to eye, and even at times their goals are at odds with ours. And I frankly think that's Trump over Harris.
I mean, imagine if we all spoke different languages at this table. This show couldn't function. And that's how it works.
Sure, but languages are inherent to culture. Like if you're asking people to give up their language for the greater global homogeny, like I don't like that. I think people should have their own languages because they are a part of, a value system that I'm not necessarily a part of, but that should exist.
I agree too, because if you only have one language, the language can be corrupted. That's a danger. If the dictionary wants to change the definition of a word, everyone gets corrupted at once. So you need multiple languages, but one common language. We kind of almost have it with English. They teach it in business school across the world.
The business language of the world.
The common. It's the common of D&D. Everyone knows common, and then the dwarves also know dwarvish. The elves know elvish. Humans, if they are intelligent, can learn other languages, like Spanish. Obviously intelligent. So, but I think it's very important that we have at least a universal language.
Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.